music. This is more like it. Happy New Year's, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the holidays and have gotten some great adventures planned for this year. Today we're going to be going on our first biking holiday. This is a great vacation for somebody who wants to test the waters on adventure travel or the more intrepid traveler who wants to make it more challenging. Also, it's an adventure that the whole family, even those as young as 10, can do. What a great bonding opportunity for parents or grandparents and the children. The bike path is gentle with no steep climbs, is virtually traffic-free, and is well marked. You bike less than 40 miles per day, about 60 kilometers, so your butt is never going to get raw, which has always been my hesitation about taking a cycling tour. This also means that you'll have plenty of time to sightsee and explore the charming and historic villages and cities along the way. You even have the option of boating it at night, or if you're traveling with somebody who doesn't want to bike, it's truly a perfect multi-generational and multi-adventure level vacation. So where are we going? Classical enthusiasts are going to recognize the background music by Johann Strauss, Blue Danube. That's right, we're going to cycle alongside the mighty Danube River, doing a section from Passau, Germany, to the magical Vienna, Austria. You can even continue your cycle all the way to Budapest. This path is Europe's favorite cycling holiday for good reason. Because it's the favorite, I thought we'd feature it as Active Travel Adventure's first cycling adventure, but I didn't know anybody who'd actually done it, so I reached out to Max because I'm such a fan of them. One of their employees had recently done this adventure, and he agreed to tell us about it. But before we begin, I want to tell you a story. Remember how in the last episode, number 10, on the 15 benefits of adventure travel? As I'm recording this, I have a big problem, and I wanted to share it with you because I think it exemplifies what I was trying to relate in that episode. I live in eastern North Carolina in the United States. During the winter, it may get freezing at night, but it's usually about 50 degrees or about 10 degrees Celsius during the day. Like most of the country, we have been in a solid Arctic freeze for almost a week. Our southern homes and our heating systems just aren't built for this kind of cold. 3 nights ago, we had a rain, and then that froze, and then it snowed on top of that, so my poor heat pump compressor froze up like an igloo. I rigged up what I thought was like a solar defroster. I wrapped it in black roofing tar paper and black trash bags in hopes that when the sun came out the next day, it would melt the ice. However, this time of year, the sun is too low in the sky, and the western trees in my yard blocked all the rays. Thus, I'm going to be without heat until we finally get above freezing again in 3 more days. My house temperature is currently about 40 degrees, which is less than 5 degrees Celsius, but I'm staying here so I can keep flushing out the pipes so they don't freeze up and bust on me. My brother brought me a space heater, so at least I'm able to keep one room warm. My family and friends are all upset and worried about me, but I'm not. I have found this reaction interesting, and I think it ties back to what I was talking about in that last episode. I'm not the least bit stressed over it at all. This is a completely different reaction than I would have had not too many years ago. Being without heat for 6 days when the temperature are in their teens, which is about 7 below in Celsius, is a big deal. But I find myself rolling with the punches. Since I can't change the situation, I better just deal with it. I believe that I'm building something I'm calling a grit bone that I attribute to my adventurous travels. These days, when I come across a new problem or obstacle, instead of fretting over it or whining like I used to, I'm becoming more detached about the problem so that I can analyze it and deal with the situation calmly. If you look over my list of the adventure travel benefits, you'll see that I've been able to translate several of these to improve my home life in this situation. There is no doubt I'm going to really appreciate that heat come Monday, but throughout this situation, I've actually felt empowered, much like I feel when I've completed one of my adventures. I truly believe that adventure travel is life-changing and has changed who Kit Parks is today. I have a few more personal items that I want to share, but I'll leave them until after the interview. So let's get started. To begin, can you please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So my name is Hamish Adamson. I'm a destination and adventure specialist for Max Adventure, who are a tour operator based in Glasgow, Scotland. So I'm sort of in my mid-20s, a keen cyclist, and trying to become a keen walker as well, but my heart lies with the cycling. So I've travelled all over Scotland, doing various adventures over the years, and travelled in various other parts of the globe as well. Travelled in New Zealand and in the US as well. So I've got a passion for adventures and particularly for cycling.
I myself used this particular company when I did the West Highland Way hike that I did in Scotland, episode number 3. I'll link to that in the show notes. I became a big fan of Max, and you'll find there that I recommend them quite often on the travel planners as a self-guided tour company where they make all the arrangements, but you do it by yourself without a guide. And I have even asked to be an affiliate with them. So more about that later. Anyhow, let's get on with the interview. As Europe's second largest river, which runs through 10 countries, the Danube River offers a great cycling holiday. In fact, it's Europe's most popular cycling holiday. Last July, Hamish himself did the Passau to Vienna sections. I've asked him to tell us a little bit about his adventure and to describe the 2 ways that you can do this adventure.
Okay. So as I say, we offer two kind of variations of cycling on the Danube. The first would be a hotel-to-hotel trip. So we offer 2 sections. The first would be from Passau, which is in Germany, and you would cycle to Vienna, the capital of Austria. And the second section is from Vienna and then finishing in Budapest in Hungary. So you cycle along the River Danube, along really easy flat cycle paths the whole way, cycling from sort of hotel to hotel and stopping along the way for taking in all the various sites and points of interest.
It's cool that the path itself is fairly level. What percentage are you actually in towns versus the countryside?
Sure. Yeah, it varies a little bit. But generally speaking, the majority of your day, so I'd probably say, something between 80-90% of your day is going to be on the dedicated traffic-free cycle paths. Once you get into the villages and towns, sometimes you have to deviate from the cycle paths and sort of go on to sort of quieter sort of town roads. But no, the majority of the cycling is free of traffic, which is great for sort of cyclists who that's maybe their first sort of cycling holiday, or or people who are looking for a bit more of a leisure trip as well. You can really sort of relax when you're doing the cycling on this along the Danube and not really have to worry about running into any cars.
Cool. On average, about how long are you cycling each day?
Yeah, so for both the Passau to Vienna and Passau to Budapest trips, you're probably looking at about 40 to 50 kilometres a day. So that's probably about approximately 25 to sort of 35 miles a day.
So what does that take? Maybe half a day and allowing you to putz along the way and do some sightseeing?
Exactly, yeah. Obviously everyone's a little bit different in terms of how they approach kind of their schedule for the day. Most people would probably check out the hotel in the morning, probably cycle for a couple of hours, then maybe stop for lunch somewhere. Some people sort of make a packed lunch for themselves so they can just stop anywhere they want. Other people like to stop at a restaurant or cafe and sort of sit down and have a proper sit down meal, and then you might continue cycling on for a couple of hours. So yeah, I think the thing to remember about these sorts of trips is that getting from point A to point B as fast as you can is not the aim. You're really looking to take in all the sights along the way. So I would probably say on average, you're probably looking at maybe 3 to 5 hours, depending on your ability and also how many times you stop.
Different from most of the adventures I cover on this podcast, this one seems like it's very suitable for families. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So we offer a dedicated family version of this trip, which is a slightly amended itinerary as well. But to be honest, both the itineraries we've just been discussing, Passau to Vienna and Vienna to Budapest, would be suitable for families as well. The cycling is really straightforward. There's no hills to speak of, and because it's traffic free for the vast majority, you would be absolutely fine taking sort of children probably from the age of 10 upwards on the trip. And indeed, when I was out there in July this year, I saw numerous sort of families and sort of family groups out in the cycle path.
Who provides the bikes, Max, or do we have to bring our own?
Yeah, we can arrange. We can do either option. The majority of people probably would get bike hire from ourselves, but some people might be doing maybe a cycle tour, around Europe, and might have their own bikes with them, and they would just like us to sort of arrange accommodation for them. So we can do that as well. The bikes are hybrid touring bikes, so they're very comfortable, very practical. They come with panniers and bags on the side, so plenty of room for anything you want to take with you on the day. And you get a wee handlebar bag as well, which is handy for putting your sort of paper route notes and things like that to help you guide yourself along the route.
What about the rest of your clothing and belongings? Explain how that gets transported from one stop to the next.
So we offer daily baggage transfers as part of the price of the trip. So your luggage is collected from the hotel reception or the designated pickup area in the hotel in the morning, and then it's delivered to your next accommodation, usually sort of late afternoon. So all you have to worry about when you're cycling is just getting from point A to point B and enjoying the route. It's pretty stress-free.
Well, I love to backpack. I used the luggage transfer service on my Scotland trip, and I have to admit, that was really sweet to have everything lugged for you every day, waiting for you when you got there, and they just take it in the morning. That's a really nice service. My only experience lugging about 30 pounds on a bike was when I was relieving a long-distance biker that I met on my French trip last year, and it gets tiring. So this luggage transfer is a really nice luxury. Let's talk a minute about the route markings. How easy is it to find the path, and is it easy to get lost?
So the cycle path is kind of split up into various sections. So each section will have a number on it, and there's signs along the route. So most commonly on one-day cycling, you'll be following the same path. So say it's number 7, just follow the signs for number 7 that day. We also provide route notes and maps as well. So you're covered on all bases, really. But to be honest, you don't need any great navigation skills for this trip. Because you're following the cycle path that follows the river, you really can't go wrong. As long as you keep going on the same side of the river and following that, you'll get to where you need to go to.
When's the best time of year to do this, to both avoid the crowds and to have the best weather?
Yeah, so I think it probably depends a little bit on what the most important thing to you when you're thinking about the trip. If you're looking for the best weather, then probably you're looking at sort of June, July. It does tend to get quite warm in July and August, so that's something to bear in mind. When I was cycling along the Danube in July, it was a bit of a heat wave, and the temperatures were well over 30 degrees centigrade, which is pretty warm for part of Europe at that time of year. If you're looking to avoid the crowds, then probably you want to look at the months of May or September. And they can also be very good for weather as well, actually. The weather tends to be a little bit cooler, probably more around 20 degrees centigrade. And the paths certainly are quieter at that time of year as well.
We're going to be going through some incredible historical areas and some beautiful areas. Can you tell us a little bit, almost day by day, about what we'd be seeing and doing? And also, are we able to modify the itinerary a little bit if we wanted to stay an extra day in a certain town or city?
For the Passau to Vienna trip, that is quite customizable. You can add in extra nights along route. So if you want to have a day off the bike and sort of go and explore one particular region, we can do that. Probably cutting it down in nights is probably not something we generally advise. The kind of route's laid out the way it is just to give you a really nice, easy-paced sort of cycling itinerary. But yeah, Passau's a fantastic starting point. It's actually a city of 3 rivers. So it sits at the confluence of the Danube, the River Danube, the River Inn, and the River Ilz. So it's quite a historic city. Quite a lot of our customers might have an extra night at the start there, so arriving a day earlier, just so they can have a bit more time there to explore. It's a great place to take a tour of the city and sort of stroll through the lanes and the arches and tunnels that surround it. So Passau is a great starting point. So for the Passau to Vienna route, you then move on to the Schlügener Loop area.
Before Hamish moves on, I want to talk a little bit more about Passau. It is, as he mentioned, a place where 3 rivers meet, and periodically, about every 5 years, it does flood. At one of the tunnels, you'll see a marker that shows all the different floods since 1501, so that's kind of cool. As Hamish alluded, be sure to take some time to wander through the tunnels and the streets. It's a very cool city. People visit Passau not just for the scenic rivers, but also for the old city. While there, be sure to take time to visit St. Stephen's Cathedral. It has an organ concert daily and features the 2nd largest pipe organ in the world. They do the concerts from May through September. Another cool thing to do is, next to the town hall is a very significant jazz and political cabaret stage. I'm going to mangle this name, called the Scharfender House. Try to check that out while you're in town. You'll find some gorgeous Gothic and Baroque architecture in Passau, and it's worth an extra day trip if you have the time.
So Passau is right on the border of Austria, and then you're soon sort of cycling through the upper Danube Valley on the way to Schulingen, where your first overnight stop is. So because some of the highlights of that day would be a visit to the only Trappist monastery in Austria, which is at Engelhartsel. And they offer some delicious liqueurs as well, which is a nice way to start your trip. You also on that day take in the Schlugener Loop, which is where the river makes a complete 180-degree turn. So it's quite a famous part of the river. And actually, if you were to sort of look it up online, you'll see some fantastic photography of people who've you can hike up the mountainside and get a really good sort of panoramic view of this of the river as it loops, comes down, and then loops around itself and goes back up. So that's a fantastic starting point as well.
I'll be sure to put photos of that on the activetraveladventures.com website for this episode number 11. So far, we started from Passau, Germany, and have hugged the border of Austria through the Schlugener Loop on day 2, and then here we go into day 3, the Linz area. Linz is the capital of Upper Austria. It's the third largest city, and it's just south of the Czech border. Linz is home of the Linzer Torte, the oldest cake in the world that was first created in 1653. In the old city center, you'll see the medieval arch, and you'll see lots of neoclassical, neo-baroque, and neo-Renaissance styles. Linz has got a big music and art scene, and it's designated as one of UNESCO's creative cities. Because Linz treasures its arts and music scene, they have a ton of festivals. You may want to try to coincide your visit along with a special festival that interests you. Linz is a good-sized city, so you'll eat well in Linz. You'll have the traditional fare, of course, tons of cute taverns, and then also plenty of ethnic choices as well. You can have, of course, the traditional fare, which might include the popular Linzer Torte, the kanoodles, which is a boiled dumpling that's used as a side dish, or it can be sweetened up as a dessert, or the strudel, which is a descendant of the pastry baklava. Another specialty is, here's a butchering, Erdefalkas. It's a spread made from cream and mashed potatoes. If you have the time, try to add an extra day or two for Linz. Here's Hamish talking about Linz.
And then, so day 3, you're heading into Linz that day. So some of the days you cross to the other side of the river, and one of those days is day 3. So you take a small passenger ferry across the other side of the river, and then sort of move on up from there. You're starting to move into sort of a more open landscape here, kind of fertile plains and that sort of thing as you head into Linz. And Linz is a fantastic destination. It's the capital of Upper Austria, and was actually the European culture capital a few years back in 2009. So it's got some really nice places to visit, a lovely main square as well, which is something I know a lot of our customers enjoy in the summer evenings. A really nice place to spend a few hours and enjoy a coffee, or perhaps sample some of the local wines and beers and that sort of thing. And then moving on, day 4, you're going to the region of Gren. This day you've got a diversion you can do to the town of Enns. So this is a town that's the oldest in Austria and is really, really beautiful, and also has a lot of history to it as well. And then you continue along the Danube, taking in kind of lots of meadows and quite tranquil sort of countryside on the way. This is a really good day actually for people who are interested in history, because you can take in the Celtic village of Ritterkirchen, and also a church in Baumgartenberg, and there's also a castle in the town of Clam as well. And then your destination that day is the Baroque village of Gren, which is home to the oldest theatre in Austria, which you can actually take a tour of as well. I did this when I was there. It's really cheap. It's about €5, and your guide is a local who's lived there sort of, for a number of years and knows a lot about the theatre. It's a working theatre still, so the local theatre group performs in there, but it's been sort of operating for hundreds of years.
I'll put all the links in the show notes and also on the free travel planner for this episode.
Day 5, you're moving on to Melt. So you're cycling through some really wonderful landscape on this particular day. Quite a lot of kind of wooded, sort of densely wooded rock formations on both sides, so it's quite dramatic. Along the way, there's a pilgrimage church of Maria Tarfel, which is perched kind of high up above the Danube, so presents quite a good view from where you're down the river. And then in Melk itself, you've actually got a Benedictine monastery as well. So depending on how long you take to do your ride that day, you might have time to go there in the afternoon. The monastery offer a couple of different options for sort of having a look round. And they've got really well-known gardens, so you can just get into the gardens if you wish. Or for a little extra, you can actually go into the monastery itself and have a look round as well. And then on day 6, we're moving on to Krems. So you're going to be cycling through the Wachau Valley, which is the sort of a wine region of Austria. So this particular area is it's full of sort of terrace vineyards. It's got apricot orchards. There's lots of little castles dotted about, and more kind of palaces and monasteries as well. So you're going to be cycling through villages such as Spitz, Weiskirchen, and Dürnstein. And these places, they're all kind of filled with really nice places to eat and drink as well, and also to sample lots of local produce, which is a nice way to spend the day as well. Lots of the sort of wineries that you'll be cycling past also offer tours as well, so that's something you can do, and certainly something I would recommend. It's always good to try the local drinks when you can. And then on day 7, your last day of cycling, you're going to be heading into Vienna, the capital of Austria. So you take a train for the first part of this section, where you go to Tulln. This is just to kind of sort of cut down the cycling that day. If you wanted to, you could do the whole route, but I think that would add up to about 70 or 80 kilometres in that day, which is quite a long day. So we started off with a train, which cuts down your cycling to approximately 40 kilometres in that day.
I'm just going to interject for a minute. 40 kilometers is roughly 25 miles. So if you do it with the train, it's a 25-mile bike ride. Or if you don't use the train, it's about a 50-mile bike ride.
And you will cycle on through the Vienna woods, and then pass through the gates of Vienna. And some highlights of this particular day, one of which would be the Klostern Nürburgring Monastery. Definitely one to have a look at. And then you arrive in Vienna, which is kind of known as the city of music. So I spent a day in Vienna earlier this year and really, really sort of fell in love with it. It's a really delightful city, and really, I think, the perfect sort of place to end your cycle. So you've got a night there, and then day 8 is when you sort of head off. So if you've got a hire bike with us, you would drop that bike off and sort of make your onward travel and sort of go and continue your journey to wherever you're going next.
Before we talk about how you can bike and also cruise the Danube at the same time, and by that I mean at night you're spending the night on a boat, so you never have to keep packing and unpacking. It's kind of a cool way to do it as well. I want to tell you some other cool things about Vienna. It is as Hamish said, it is the capital of Austria and also Austria's largest city and the 7th largest in the EU. It is Austria's cultural, economic, and political center. It is the home of Sigmund Freud, and so they also call it the City of Dreams. And like most of this trip, you'll see much Celtic and Roman history. Vienna is considered to be in the top 5 in the quality of life indexes of places to live. And it's considered the most prosperous in the world. Vienna is also considered the gateway to Eastern Europe and is the last great capital of the 19th century ball. They still hold over 450 balls a year. Some have up to 9 orchestras. The most popular is held in the Hofburg Palace in Heldenplatz. Most middle class and upwards go to several balls in their lifetime. The Wiener Schnitzel, which you'll find in almost every Austrian restaurant, is a powdered veal or pork cutlet breaded and fried in clarified butter. It's very good. Another common thing to eat is Tafelspitz, which is a boiled beef. All right, here comes a bad one. Geröstet Äpfelfilet, which is boiled potatoes, mashed and then fried and served with a horseradish sauce. You'll find lots of street vendors with sausages or wieners, and you can ask for mustard either sweet or spicy. Make sure you take time to go see the famous market, the Naschmarkt. Go see the city opera, the Ringstrasse, and the Castle Schönbrunn. And I do apologize for all of my German-speaking folks. I know I just cannot speak very well, but I apologize. I'll spell all these out in the show notes. One really popular thing are the Viennese cafes, and some say that Starbucks got its idea there. The Viennese create a culture of cafes. The people spend hours there as if it's their own home, and they claim to be the first to have filtered coffee. There are over 100 art museums. There's lots of things to see and do in Vienna, so do try to stay at least a couple of days, or if not longer, to enjoy everything the city has to offer. Vienna has so much to offer, from the cozy wine taverns, the wonderful food, the fabulous coffee shops, the imperial palaces, the art museums, the music, the balls. It's a cultural mecca. Hamish, when you look back on your adventure, do you have a favorite memory?
Oh, yeah. Good question. I think I've got a couple of highlights. Probably the first on day 2. So I did a bike and boat itinerary. Day 2 of that itinerary, we got the opportunity as a detour to the main route to go and visit Mauthausen concentration camp, which is not one of the most infamous concentration camps, but it was one of the biggest during World War II, and I've never had the opportunity to sort of explore or sort of sites like that before. So it was a bit daunting at first, looking at eerie silence of the place and sort of contemplating sort of all the horrors that sort of went on there. But personally, I find that aspect of our sort of modern history quite interesting, and certainly gives you appreciation of efforts that everyone went to keep us safe back then. So and then Vienna for me was a great highlight. If you're going to spend some extra time along the itinerary, I'd say Vienna is a great city to do that in. The amount of history there is just quite astounding. You're kind of tripping over famous palaces, opera houses, museums at every turn, and it's a great city for cycling in as well. The cycle paths in the city itself are plentiful and really easy to use, and everyone's very considerate of cyclists as well. One of the highlights, probably in terms of the kind of the landscape and things, would be on day 2 of the Passo di Vienna itinerary, where I mentioned the Schlugener Loop, where the river makes a complete 180-degree turn. As I mentioned, you can go a hike up from the river, probably about a 30-40 minute hike, up quite a steep path, but it's worth it for sure. The sort of panoramic landscape view you've got from there is fantastic. So if the weather's good, that's something I'd definitely encourage people to do.
Do you have a favorite story that you tell your friends about this trip?
Well, I think probably for me it was the people that you meet. The Danube is a popular path, so there's a wide variety of people doing it for a wide variety of reasons. Kind of compare it to something like perhaps one of the sort of pilgrim walks, such as the Camino Santiago. Some people are doing this Danube cycle just as a sort of leisure holiday. Other people might be doing it as part of a much larger tour, sort of through Europe. You can follow the Danube from its source all the way to the Black Sea. So you meet a wide variety of people. So I got sort of speaking to lots of North Americans, lots of other Europeans, and on one particular day had stopped at the same place as I think we were English actually, some English fellow cyclists, and we ended up having lunch together and enjoying a beer, and just that sort of experience I think was one of the real highlights for me. The kind of camaraderie along the route. There's a real sense of everyone's there enjoying the cycling and sort of waving to each other and that sort of thing. So yeah, I think that's probably one of the highlights for sure.
I'm guessing if you see others with the panniers on their bikes that you can tell they're doing the same type of cycling vacation and not just out for a day cycle.
Yeah, exactly. So there's we work with a local partner for this trip. So yes, you can recognize the panniers generally, and you can there's a knowing nod when you're going past someone who is doing the same trip as you. I mean, the cycle paths, they're used by locals as well, so it's a good opportunity to meet people from the local area as well. Lots of people use them to get from one town to another and that sort of thing, to visit friends and family. So as well as meeting other tourists, you also get the chance to meet locals as well, which I think is always a bonus.
A lot of us English speakers don't speak German. Is that going to be an issue?
No, I wouldn't say it would be an issue. I an English-only speaker as well. I did study a bit of German at high school, as a lot of people, may have studied French or Spanish and so on. So I was able to say hello and sort of say certain phrases like, can I have a glass of water and that sort of thing. But to be honest, the sort of tourism infrastructure on the Danube is really, really good, and all the hotels and accommodations that we use would have staff that can speak English in. So if that's something people are worried about, I wouldn't let it worry you too much. I mean, all your documentation in terms of your navigation and things like that is in English, and what we offer in terms of our service would be sort of a 24-hour 7 emergency assistance line. So if there's any issues and you're trying to speak to someone but they can't, they don't speak English, then you can just give us a ring, and we're on the end of the line to give you a hand. Everyone along Danube is really friendly, and most of the time you're going to be able to find someone who speaks English, and certainly at the hotels there's always going to be at least one or two people who are English speaking.
I have two comments on what Hamish just said. Number one, part of the fun and some of my favorite stories are when I was trying to interact and could not speak the local language, and it ends up sometimes being some of your fondest memories. But number two, one of the nice things about going with a company such as Max is that you do have the safety net of help should you need it. When I used them for my Scotland trip, I never had to call, but it was nice to know that they were there. We alluded earlier to the fact that this could also be a bike boat adventure, and this is particularly nice if somebody doesn't think they want to bike every single day for a few hours for 7 days, or let's say it's a family and maybe not everybody wants to do all that. There's lots of different reasons that you might want the option, or you just don't want to unpack every day and you want to just be in your same cabin every single night. Can you tell us a little bit about the bike boat option?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, we offer sort of a couple of different variations of that. The first would be from Passau to Vienna again. It follows a slightly different itinerary to the hotel one. And then again and then the second one is from Passau all the way to Budapest. So the bike and boat option I really think it's fantastic actually. It's a really good one again for beginners, and probably a good one for people who want a little bit less hassle. So because you're not cycling from hotel to hotel, you only unpack once, which is a really big appeal for a lot of customers of ours. The other big appeal is the fact that the trip's full board as well, so you don't have to worry about any of your meals. You get breakfast, a packed lunch, and then a 3-course dinner when you get back on board the boat. So the cruises are all generally multinational nationality as well. So it's a great chance to meet new like-minded people. And again, you're cycling through very similar sort of areas to the hotel routes, but just doing it in a slightly different order. But I was really, it was the trip I did in July was a bike and boat one, and it was the first time I'd done the combination of the two. And I was really surprised and pleasantly surprised at how much I enjoyed it. It was a really fantastic trip.
How big is the ship, and is it dedicated just to your clients, or is it a mix of whomever books on the ship?
The two boats that we offer trips on are broadly comparable in terms of size. It's going to be between sort of about 80 to 100 people on board. So the river cruise boats, so they're quite a decent size, generally about 3 decks. So you'd have a lower deck, a main deck, and then an upper deck. The boats that we work with, they are dedicated cycling boats. However, the benefit of these doing a bike and boat trip is that if there's maybe a member of the party who isn't that enamoured by cycling and might enjoy sort of pottering about in the morning and sort of having a look at where the boat is docked, the surrounding area, and then hopping back on the boat when it moves on to its next stop, you can do that as well. And likewise, if you're a keen cyclist, but maybe one day you've maybe overdid it a bit too much the previous day, you can just relax on the boat and sort of take a day off and sort of go up to the sun deck and relax, read your book and that sort of thing. So it's there's quite a lot of flexibility when you're doing a bike and boat trip, I would say.
What kind of flexibility, if any, do you have if you do the bike and boat? Can you do an extra day in Lindsay, for example, or do you have to stick with the itinerary?
No, that's not possible, unfortunately. It's the boats depart weekly. They depart on a Saturday for the Passau to Vienna trip and on a Sunday for the Passau to Budapest trip. So you'll be staying on the same boat for the duration. So the departure dates are fixed, but I would say the itineraries that you do on a daily basis, you have a sort of briefing, a daily briefing in the evening, which is conducted in English, and the kind of tour director will go through the route with you and discuss certain points of interest. But what they also do is point out places where you can take detours as well. So these could vary from maybe an extra few kilometres up to maybe an extra 10, 15, 20 kilometres. So there is an element of customisation available within this kind of the parameters of the set day cycling. So if there's something that particularly interests you, if it's something historical, or if it's something more related to food and drink, for instance, then you can pick and choose and maybe add on bits to the day that would more suit your interests.
Tell us about your favorite dishes and what kind of food we can expect to enjoy.
Yeah, so the food was fantastic, actually. It's a kind of mixture between sort of some classic European dishes and also some more traditional Austrian dishes. So we had quite a wide variety. We had some lovely fish dishes on a couple of the days. The food you would select the night before. So there's a kind of a set menu to choose from every evening beforehand. So you would have the choice of a meat dish, a fish dish, and also a vegetarian option as well. It'd be 3 courses. I mean, there was lots of nice dishes, where we had some lovely strudel for dessert some nights, and meatballs and lots of nice sort of Austrian sausage and things like that. So yeah, the food was of a really high quality, and there's plenty of it as well. And what you do for sort of lunchtime, your packed lunch, the way they operate breakfast is a sort of buffet style. And then once you're finished breakfast, you are invited to go and sort of make up sort of a packed lunch yourself. So you select all your breads, your continental meats and things like that, and then they'll package that up for you, so you've got it all ready for when you decide to stop for lunch along the route. Of course, if you want all that's included in your holiday cost, but if you wanted to stop on the route and then have lunch at a restaurant as well, you could do that as well. You just leave your packed lunch for the day.
In case somebody's on a treadmill or driving and not paying 100% attention, I just want to clarify that the full board is strictly with the bike and boat adventure and not with the bike only adventure. On the bike only, if it's like the West Highland Way, that I just had breakfast only. Can you explain or clarify that for us, please, Hamish?
Yeah, exactly. So hotel to hotel itinerary. As standard, we include breakfast. We can also offer half board options as well for that. So that would be having breakfast and dinner, and then you would look after lunch. That would be sort of a supplement for that option. Because for that sort of itinerary, we like to give people a little bit of flexibility, because it's nice to be able to sort of visit a restaurant or all on the way, particularly go and explore in the evening time. But for the bike and boat itineraries, they are all inclusive. So you have your breakfast, lunch and dinner included throughout.
On my Scotland trip, I paid a single supplement because I was traveling solo. Is that also the same on this trip?
It is, yeah. So for the hotel to hotel options, it would be a single supplement, and you can do that. You can do that trip as a solo traveller as well. For the bike and boat trips, there is a single supplement payable as well. So they have sort of dedicated cabins that are allocated for solo travellers. So sometimes that can present a little bit of a problem in terms of availability. Cabins are limited, the number that they offer solo travellers. But to be honest, I would actually say that the bike and boat option is a great one to think about if you are traveling solo. It was actually something I kind of mentioned to the rest of the team here at Max Adventure when I got back from my trip. I really think it's a good one for solo travelers, because you're on boat with lots of other people. I really found that it was a really friendly, sort of welcome atmosphere. After a couple of days, after the initial kind of getting to know everyone phase, it was a bit like when you're a kid and you're going to summer camp or something like that. You really sort of make some good friends along the way for the week. And if you're traveling by yourself, I think that can be a real nice thing to have.
Obviously, I'm a fan of your company. And in the last year or two, I've also become a convert to hiring companies to plan my tours, whether it be self-guided like Max offers or a fully guided tour, because adventure travel is a little bit different. It's a little bit more complicated than traditional travel. But for the intrepid traveler that would like to plan their own adventure, is this something they could do by themselves?
Sure. So for the hotel to hotel option, planning yourself, it'd probably be doable. But I mean, to be honest, we've been offering trips like this for a number of years now. So we've developed a real kind of expertise in terms of putting together the baggage transfers, organising the bike hire, and things like that. So, I mean, as with most holidays, I think if you really sort of worked hard at it, you could probably plan it out yourself. But I think the benefit of having someone like Max Adventure do the trip for you is that all the stress is kind of take out of it. We book everything from your bike hire, hotels, baggage transfers, transfers on request, sort of to their starting point from airports and things like that. So it can really take the stress out of it. Which I know when I've tried to organise trips like this myself, after a few weeks of sort of trying to do it, I sometimes think, why did I start this? I think I would have rather got someone else to do it for me.
I'm going to ditto what Hamish just said. I was so anti-tour until I started using tour groups such as Max, because on adventure travel, it's different than what I always visioned as tour companies where you'd follow behind the white flags. Listen to my rant on episode 000. I mean, I just was so against it. But I think with adventure travel, because it can be a little bit more complicated, and they have the boots on the ground, they know where the complications are. If you listen to my Scotland thing about the King's House thing, they knew that was closed. And if I had planned that by myself, I'd have been in a pickle. And it's nice to have somebody that they've already figured everything out. You know how when you go on a trip, I would have done this differently. next time around. You don't have time to go back and do this next time around. So it's nice that somebody's already figured out all the logistics for you. All you have to do is just go on the adventure. They don't even charge that much, I don't think, relatively speaking, for the value that you get. So not only is it more stress-free, it is a huge time saver. I mean, I just can't even imagine the logistics of figuring out some of these adventures because you don't know how far, you don't know the terrain, so you got to figure out how far you're going to go each day, and then what town do you need to stop in, or where should I stay? I don't have time for that anymore. So anyhow, I'm a convert, and I don't think I'm going to self-plan an adventure trip myself anymore. I'm changed. Well, Hamish, we've mentioned my trip to Scotland and your trip on the Danube, but Max goes all over the place. How about telling us a little bit more about the company?
Sure. So the company was founded in 2003. It was founded by a chap called Neil Lapping, who's originally from South Africa, but then somehow made his way over to Scotland and settled in Glasgow. We originally started off just offering, it was guided walking trips along the West Highland Way, which is, Scotland, probably arguably Scotland's sort of most famous walking route. And then sort of as the years kind of passed and the company grew and began to focus more on offering self-guided trips, which is now all that we offer is self-guided. And then the cycling part of the business sort of came along a little bit later, and it's kind of grown and grown from there. In the last few years, we've kind of come on leaps and bounds. We offer walking and cycling trips in the majority of Europe. We've now started offering trips in North America as well, and some trips in Asia as well. And we've opened up a couple of international offices as well. So we have an office in Germany, and we've recently opened up an office in Boulder, Colorado, which I think is going to be a great help for our North American customers in terms of being able to speak to someone on the phone in the same time zone and that sort of things. We have about 20,000 adventure seekers travel with us every year, and that's kind of growing every year as well. So there's a team of 60 of us here in Glasgow, and we all work on putting together itineraries, developing tours, solving problems in case anything goes wrong on tour, and just making sure that all our customers sort of have a fantastic time from the moment that they inquire with us to the time that they come back.
Before I let you go, is there anything that I forgot to ask you that you need to convey to the audience?
I think probably the one thing I would mention for the bike and boat itineraries is probably the importance to sort of get booked in early, really. Those trips are popular. And because the boats only sail on certain days of the week, the availability can go very quickly. So for 2018, for some trips, we're already looking at a lot of dates being sold out. So that's something I would definitely encourage people to do is to sort of get their plans sorted out as early as they can and get in touch. For the hotel trip, there's probably a bit more flexibility. If you find that you have a few weeks vacation coming up and you fancy a cycling trip, then usually we can organise the hotel to hotel one with sort of a few weeks notice. So yeah, I think we always encourage people to get in touch nice and early because it means that we can guarantee the departure dates and things like that, and make sure you get the sort of trip you're looking for.
When you say far in advance for the bike and boat, are we talking a year or what are we talking about here?
Oh yeah, it's definitely so. The bike and boat season, it runs approximately from April to October. So definitely for the summer dates, yeah, you're kind of looking at a year in advance to guarantee the dates that you want. Sometimes you can maybe afford to sort of push it maybe into the fall, but at this time of year in November and December, and then when we move into sort of January and February, which is sort of peak booking time for all holidays, really, the availability really starts to diminish. So yeah, I think probably a year is ideal. Probably between sort of a year and sort of say 8 to 6 months is probably sort of the minimum you would want to look at.
Final question. You're a big cycler. If we had to choose another cycling holiday besides the Danube, what should we choose?
Oh, well, that's I'm going to be biased here and suggest looking at Scotland. One of my favourite trips that we offer is cycling from Perthshire, which is about an hour and a half north of our capital city of Edinburgh. So starting there and cycling through a really beautiful part of Scotland. Perthshire is famous for its really tall trees and really lush sort of green countryside and lots of lochs and glens and that sort of thing. So Yeah, I think Scotland's got some great cycling opportunities. Probably not as well developed as somewhere like the Danube, but I think in some ways that can be a good thing. There's not as many sort of cyclists on the road as you might find in some other parts of Europe. And if you're willing to sort of gamble on the weather, then sometimes you might get a wee bit wet, but then sometimes you might get some glorious sunshine with some fantastic sort of mountains and forests in the background as well.
Speaking of bad weather, on my Scotland trip, my bad weather days, of which I had 2, ended up being my favorite story days.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I've had the same experience. Sometimes when it's really rainy outside, everyone has to maybe stay in their hotel and B&B for the day, and that's quite often when you learn a lot about your fellow travellers and perhaps make a friend you might have for the rest of your holiday, and certainly maybe for going on afterwards.
Many thanks to Hamish Adamson for his insight on biking alongside the Danube River. On today's show notes, I'll of course have some photos, links to things we've discussed, outline the differences between biking the Danube and bike boating the Danube, the itineraries, plus a complete transcript of the show. For you non-native English speakers, remember that there's a Google Translate button at the bottom of each of my web pages. If you haven't signed up for the newsletter, be sure to do so and you'll get the free travel planner for this and all future episodes in our monthly email. You can get it by clicking on the newsletter link at activetraveladventures.com. Earlier, I mentioned that I wanted to tell you about a couple of personal things. Number 1, I think that I may have solved my podcaster's pooch problem. Remember that I said that now that I'm spending so much time in front of the computer producing this show, that I put on weight? I just ordered a walking desk. It's a treadmill with a desktop so I can gently walk all day long. I hope that this works as I refuse to buy fat clothes and things are getting a little tight. Number 2, I've been training for my upcoming Costa Rica hike at the end of this month. On this trip, I'll be attempting to climb Cerro Chirripó. It's Costa Rica's tallest mountain. The highest mountain I've climbed so far was about 8,500 feet, and Chirripó is about 12,500, which is 2,600 and 3,800 meters, respectively. Where I live in North Carolina is flat, so this is going to be interesting. Of course, I'm going to cover this adventure on a show later this spring. I'm also going to be whitewater rafting the Pequari River for the second time, except this time I'm going to be doing it for 2 days and staying overnight in the rainforest. And my sister's coming with me, and this is her first adventure travel vacation. I'm just super excited about the whole adventure. Number 3, putting on the show costs money, and I really don't want to accept advertiser money. And I definitely don't want to see ads for things I may not even support sitting in a banner ad alongside the ad a webpage. And I don't like really listening to ads inserted into podcasts. So what I've decided to do to help defray some of my expenses is to go directly to the companies that I've already vetted and love, people that I trust and believe in, and ask to become an affiliate partner. What this means is that at no additional cost to you, if you click on some, not all my links, but some of the links may be affiliate links in the future, and I may earn a small commission. So if you like what I'm doing with this program, and you're going to be doing it anyway, clicking on my links is a way to support the program, and it doesn't cost you a dime. I believe this is a win-win solution, and I hope that you're going to agree. At the time of this recording, I'm not an affiliate of Max, but as many of you know, I'm a big fan, and I have sent them an email asking to be one. All along, I've been promoting Max and many of the travel planners without any compensation because I believe in them. My integrity is on the line with every recommendation I give you, and I take that responsibility strongly. You come before any potential commission. So anyhow, I just wanted to explain this. Finally, on the survey that I asked you to take, you said you wanted adventures in South America. So on our next episode, we're going way, way south of the equator to Patagonia. We're going to be going to Chile and Argentina. This adventure is on the bucket list of many of you, so be sure to subscribe so you don't miss it. If you haven't taken the survey, just go to activetraveladventures.com and the link is on the homepage. Many thanks also to Naxos for providing the music of the beautiful Blue Danube for us today. It was conducted by Andre Leonard. Listening to this music, don't you just feel like getting all decked out and waltzing at a ball? Thanks for listening. I'll be back in 2 weeks, and until next time, adventure on.